Okay, welcome back for part 2 of chapter 5. We left off talking about evolution. Well, part of evolution is speciation, or some evolution can occur or create speciation. Speciation is the creation of a new species. And that's what's really important when it comes to biodiversity. Because if we're creating new species, we are increasing the biodiversity. So we're going to go through this. Allopatric speciation is when new species are created by geographic or reproductive isolation. This is the founder effect. This is some of those kind of things when populations get separated. This is the most common way that new species are formed. So what happens is over time you get speciation. It can occur through evolution and stuff if certain situations occur and the populations get isolated in some way. So they end up on islands and stuff. So your founder effect, some of the ones we went through, your bottleneck, no, really founder effect, can create speciation. Then we have sympatric speciation. This type of speciation occurs because there is a change in the number of chromosomes. Polyploidy is when the number of chromosomes increases from 2 to like 3, 4, or 6 sets of the same chromosome. We have 2 sets of the same chromosome. If for some reason polyploidy happened and somebody got 3 sets of all their chromosomes, they would be actually a different species. If they tried to reproduce with somebody who has 2 sets, they would not be able to produce a fertile offspring. So over time, your polyploidy actually creates a reproductive isolation. They can't breed, so therefore they become isolated that way reproductively, or they can't produce fertile offspring. This can happen naturally, but it can also happen anthropogenically, which means human caused. We do this a lot with agriculture. We've done this with wheat. So these are the examples of wheat. And the difference is that one's the diploid and then you get polyploidy. You get more sets. So we've done that. And then they become reproductively isolated. Okay. Factors that affect the rate of speciation. Or adaptation in a population. The rate of the environmental change. When you look at this graph, you see on what would be the vertical axis, there's the rate of the environmental change. If this change occurs slowly, you usually have a better adaptation rate to change. Animals can adapt, but they adapt slowly to things. So if your event occurs slowly, the chances are your animals and plants will be able to adapt to the new situation. If an event happens fast, volcanic eruption, there gives the plants or animals basically no time at all to adapt to the new situations, the new environment. So chances are they're going to be eliminated and they won't be able to adapt to the new situation. Next is genetic variation. The fact is, the greater your genetic variation within your population, the easier it is for a population to adapt because they have more genetic variability to select from or to be able to survive. So if you have very little genetic diversity within your population, adaptation is going to be very difficult to occur. So they're less likely to be able to adapt to a change. If you have a lot of genetic biodiversity, genetic diversity in your population, your ability to adapt to changes or evolve or create new species is much higher because of that genetic variability. Population size. Population size is kind of an odd one. Smaller populations can actually change more quickly because it's much quicker to breed, it's much quicker, there's less variety and stuff. So small populations can actually change faster. However, larger populations have more genetic diversity. So larger populations actually usually can adapt pretty well because of that, but they're actually considered less able to adapt than a smaller population, just because within a small population, your gene frequency can change faster. So your adaptation can occur actually faster in a small population. Sorry. Generation time. How long does it take before an organism reproduces? If you have a short generation time, you are much more likely to be able to adapt to change. You can change much quicker, because if you're reproducing and having kids 6 months into your life, and then those kids are having 6 months later, you're talking you've gotten through 5 generations in 2.5 years. That can cause a population to change very quickly. But if you have a tree that has to be 50 years old before it even seeds for the first time, and then its seeds have to grow to 50 years, you're talking it takes 100 years to have 2 generations. Well, an animal like that or a plant like that is going to take much longer to adapt to a situation. So the longer your generation time, usually the less able you are to adapt to situations, which is one of our greatest fears with regards to plants, a lot of our large plants, and climate change, is that their generation time is just so long that asking them to adapt really quickly to a very fast climate change is going to be a problem. Okay, species distribution. So where do you find species? This is a graph you need to know. This is range of tolerance. You can take any factor that an animal needs or limitation that they need to survive. It's usually abiotic. Temperature, precipitation, pH, whatever it is. That's your bottom axis, your x-axis. And there's a range from low pH to high pH, from low temp to high temp, whatever it happens to be. And every animal has a range of tolerance. They have a band within that abiotic condition that they prefer. And that's kind of where you get this center, where you get this part. Okay, where you get this center. When you get down here, you get a very small population occurring in areas that are not that good. And they're considered to be under physiological stress, which means they're going to grow, they're going to survive, but they're probably not going to reproduce. They just aren't healthy enough to reproduce. And then when you get even further, you get into the zone of intolerance, and usually then the species is absent. If for some reason a species ended up in that area and could not leave, it probably would die over time. It would literally not be able to grow and reproduce and eventually die out. So if you take an organism's range of tolerance for all their different factors, and you find an area that has all those perfect ranges, the right temperature, the right precipitation, the right pH, the right light intensity, everything that an animal needs, that area is going to be referred to as their fundamental niche. A niche is basically an organism's role in the environment, their job. It's more than just where they live. It's how they function, who eats them, who do they eat, that kind of thing. It's a very complex thing. So if we take all those abiotic conditions into place, we can figure out where the fundamental niche of an organism is. That fundamental niche is where we theoretically could find this animal. But that does not take into account any of the biotic factors, the other animals, the competition, predation, disease, those kind of things. When we add in the biotic limitations, now we get the realized niche. The realized niche is where you actually are going to find them. Fundamental niche is where they theoretically could be on a abiotic conditions, has the right conditions for them. But then the realized niche is a part of your fundamental niche where you're actually going to find them. So here you go. Your fundamental niche, large area, depending on your abiotic factors. But where you actually are going to find them is your fundamental niche, and that's based on that has that biotic factor, competition, predation involved. Okay. There are organisms that are what we call niche generalists, or just generalists. These guys are well adapted to all kinds of conditions, wide range of conditions, occur everywhere. They are little turkeys. You find them everywhere, like raccoons, coyotes, squirrels. They can adapt. They're really, really good at functioning wherever. Then we have niche specialists, also just sometimes referred to as a specialist. These are organisms that are very restricted to a very specific habitat, because of something there's very specific they need. Could be a very specialized food source or habitat they need. Think panda or koala. Something restricts them. They're very specific in some ways. An animal who is a specialist is much more vulnerable to extinction if those changes occur. So if something happens to the bamboo or their specialized food source, they're much more likely to go extinct. So they're much more critical in that way. Okay, environmental indicators. Some species, we've referred to them as environmental indicators. They actually allow us to identify or see if a habitat is healthy. Cottontails, that would be a rabbit. Cattails is a type of plant that we find often in wetlands. Cattails in the Everglades tells us that there's phosphate pollution. So usually we don't have cattails. If you have a lot of cattails in an area in the Everglades, you know that that area has a lot of phosphate pollution and probably is getting a lot of runoff from some farm area. Macroinvertebrates. These are often larvae of insects and organisms. We are going to do this when we go on our field trip. You're going to go in the stream and you're going to collect macroinvertebrates. There are certain macroinvertebrates that you only find in really clear water, no pollution. If there's any pollution, they're not going to be there. And then there's others like leeches and pouch snails and stuff that actually prefer or are often found in very poor quality water or very polluted water. So what you do is you go collect what you have, and actually there's a rating you can go through and fill out based on how many critters you have and what they are. And you can determine how polluted your stream is by these macroinvertebrates. So we're going to do this. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the river we are going to be in is actually very, very clean. You can still find leeches in clean water, but you're not going to find very many of them. If the water was really nasty, you might find a lot of leeches. So it's a quantity kind of thing. And if you find mayflies and Dobson fly larvae and caddisfly larvae, you know you have really clean water. So we'll talk more about that. Okay. Extinction. Let's see if we can get through this in just a couple minutes. Extinction is forever. Means the last member of the species has died. They are gone forever off the planet. Bye-bye. Good riddance kind of thing. Not good riddance. That's really bad to say. They're never coming back. Okay, you cannot come back from extinction. Causes of extinction: no favorable environment is available, so they die out. Other species are occupying their niche and outcompeting them. A rapid change in the environment and somehow they can't adapt. That can all lead to extinction. Extinction is natural. We're not talking about human-caused extinction, but that does happen. There is a normal extinction rate, or what we call background extinction rate, which means that basically one species for every million species dies each year, or about 100 species per year if there's 10,000 species 10,000 species considered, 10 million species considered on our planet, okay, or 100 million. There's been 5 major extinction events. You should be aware of them, but you don't really need to know anything about them. The last one, the 5th one, was the dinosaurs. So here they are. You can just read through them. I really wouldn't worry about it. I don't think you need to know it. The Jurassic one, the last one, Cretaceous, Tertiary. This is the dinosaur extinction about 65 million years ago. We think it was due to an asteroid or a comet collision with the Earth. Okay, here's the thing you do need to know. We currently consider that we are in the 6th major extinction event. You are surviving a major extinction event, and it is human-caused. It's the only extinction event in our history that's ever been human-caused. It's the only one we've been around for, but we are causing it. We're basically causing it for specific reasons: habitat destruction, invasive species, pollution, climate change, overharvesting, and disease. And we're going to talk about these. That's chapter 18. Hope you guys have a great night. I will talk to you later.